The only problem with Santino and Andy is this podcast. Well, hello and welcome back to your favorite movie podcast. My name is Andy Matsky. I'm half of the equation that is the only problem. I'm joined, as always, by my friend and co-host Santino Vitali. Say what's up.
What's up?
There we go. We are two filmmakers and fans of films, and we honestly just like talking about movies. And the whole premise of the show is that we each week one of us introduces a movie to the other, and we talk about it. And this week we are talking about Quentin Tarantino's directorial debut, Reservoir Dogs, which I had never seen before. But before we get into all that, how are you doing, Santino? We just celebrated an important holiday. We just celebrated Easter. How's your Easter?
I watched Reservoir Dogs on Easter.
I
That was my
also
Easter.
I also watched Reservoir Dogs on Easter. Um, that was an interesting dichotomy. But what else is new? Have you how's Skippy and the boys? How's
Skippy and the
the
boys, they're good. I just talked
good?
to them last night, and they wanted me to give you a message. They wanted me to let you know that they're gonna have the stuff in the bag by no later than Friday. So if you
Nice.
can drive to the end of the pier, the
Got it.
one right off Faircrest, like that way.
Yeah.
If you can go there
The
around
pier.
midnight, yeah,
Yeah.
the pier. Like there's only like maybe two piers in town, and you know which one I'm talking about. Go there around midnight, and it'll be there and at the bottom of a 50-gallon drum,
Okay.
a blue
I'll be
50-gallon drum, not the
the
red one.
blue
That's
one.
yeah, the red one's for a different. That's a
Okay.
whole other thing.
Okay.
You
What
might get a weird
why
surprise if you reach
just
into
say
the red
why
one.
can't I go into the red one?
That's it's there's they didn't specify. They just said that there was definitely some stuff in the red one that would be unpleasant.
Okay.
It might offend. Yeah.
Unpleasant substances?
hmm Yeah. So you
Yeah,
want to
that'd
you
be
want to
too
reach into
bad.
the blue one around midnight, and the stuff will be there. So,
Reach in?
hmm
Like, can I look?
well, yeah, but they assumed you would look, but they
Okay.
were just like, just grab it.
You know what happens when you assume. So
hmm
we actually have a first this week on the show, and you have no clue what's
I
coming.
have no clue what you're talking about.
We have a letter this week. Someone wrote into our email and asked us a question
Somebody that's
following.
not you or me pretending to be someone else.
Yes,
Oh
it's about
wow.
as close to that as could be possible, but it isn't. And you'll see how.
Is it Mark?
It is. It is. It's my dad. My
I knew
dad.
it.
My dad wrote us this. It's succinct this time
Good.
around. Hello, Santino and Andy. I enjoyed the latest episode with its brief excursion into stop motion history and discussion of Kubrick's The Killing. I'd be curious to hear each of you address the question of what the title of the film, quote, means or is referring to. Thanks, and I'll listen off the air. Andy's dad.
Wait, he'll listen off the air.
I think it's a joke we made in last week's show where it was like on
Oh.
the air, off the air. Because I also read that and went, what? But
I
we
thought you
have
meant
the
like he's
mind.
outside your door, like listening as you
That's
do the
also what
podcast.
I thought he meant. And then I was like, no, I think we made that joke in the Killing episode. And since you and me, have collectively the mind of a memory of a Cheez-It,
hmm
I am just assuming that is what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
But so the question of what does the killing refer to in the title? I don't know if this is something that's like debated. I think it's just like an interesting question. It does, and I was like, well, what could it mean? And what's neat, and maybe it's like, well, the obvious thing, and I only realized it because this question was asked, is it could refer to the the heist loot is the killing, like they made a killing, or I just think it's like clickbait before clickbait marketing
Yeah. I don't actually know
pizzazz.
why it's called The Killing. I didn't think about it too deep, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe
I
because
mean,
everybody dies.
yeah, everybody dies in the end. Spoilers for the killing.
hmm
I don't I don't know. Like that is like it's a good question. I think it's a neat to look at it from the perspective of the loot that the object of the heist, also the fact everyone dies in the end. And I also think, I mean, Kubrick seemed to have, if he had any say in the title of his early work, Killer's Kiss is what was before this film, is before The Killing. And that was
hmm
The Killing. So I think it was just kind of the hype of its day
He
would
just
be a
liked
guess.
he just liked killing. He
He just
just liked
liked killing and he liked advertising that he was going to do it.
yeah. Well, I mean that is an interesting angle if there's any truth to that. See, I didn't research any of that, and I didn't know this was coming, so I didn't research it ahead of
I
time.
didn't research it either.
But I mean, the 50s were that was definitely a time when a lot of producers, usually more in the B movie end of things, more so than the studio end of things. But I suppose it could go either way. But at that time, they did have this habit of like coming up with the movie title first, or like making the poster first and then figuring out the movie. Again, that's more of a B movie thing, but like I'm
Yeah.
sure the marketing was certainly that was part of what they were thinking
Yeah,
with
and
anything they made.
it's also I mean notably not the title of the novel it's based on,
Right.
which I forget what that title was, but it's not the same thing.
It
So
was called Some Guys Rob a Racetrack.
called
Oh boy.
like the chase or something, I want to say. I don't know if it was the it was
It wasn't
something.
another
The
the.
but that's our first letter. If you want to write us a letter, if you want us to
I thought you meant
open
me for a second. For a split second, I was like, wait, is he talking to the
you're
viewer or
doing
me?
you are jumping.
You
Are
want to
you
run?
like caffeinated more than
I'm
normal
actually
or
way
something?
more awake tonight than I was in the last episode. I was
That's
dead
fair.
asleep
This
in the
is
last
there
episode.
was something off air where Santino jumped to a conclusion when I was mid sentence that
Yes.
also I had to like go, no, that's not what I mean.
I jumped to a
Um,
very strange conclusion. Andy was like, I won't bother getting into the details, but Andy was like, here's this thing I want to tell you about. I'm like, did this happen? He's like, how on earth did you? First of all, I'm not even done telling you the thing. And second of
yeah,
all,
I wasn't done with my sentence. I was literally like, I said the word like this, and you were like, wait, huh? And I was like, no,
I
let me
stomped on
get
it
it
so
all out.
quick.
But no, if you, the listener,
Oh, good.
want
Because
to
I
write
don't have
us.
any questions.
Yeah, it's okay. I assume you leave your questions on air. There also is a loose end of the killing episode we didn't cover that I'm just going to mention, which is the scene with Johnny Clay and the like financier at the way end of the movie. Do you remember what I'm
Oh
talking
yeah,
about?
where
We
it's
were
like
gonna talk.
strange, almost pseudo, what would that be? Like pseudo homosexual overtones. There's
Yeah,
just this
but
odd thing
totally
of like,
not.
right.
It's like the thing,
He's like,
but
Johnny, you
also
should let me go away with you, just the two of us. You just forget that dame. And I'm
it's
like,
this
the heck are
older
you talking about?
it's this older guy who's, to be fair, all of the weird whatever you want to call it is undercut by like, I've always seen you as a son. I hope that's not weird to
Sure,
say. And then it's like, we should run away
we
together,
should elope.
just like the old days. It's like,
Yeah.
what is going on right
Mm,
now? And Johnny Clay's just like, no.
no. Yeah. I think I'll take
So
my clingy girlfriend with me instead.
and then this guy, yeah, anyways, that's just I realized that literally like as I was falling to asleep the night we recorded, I was like, oh, we never got back to that scene. But this week is not about the killing. This week is about Reservoir
A
Dogs
movie
film.
inspired by the killing.
Yes, notably inspired by the killing. We're kind of building off last week's episode in a very interesting way. Do you want to tell the folks at home what Reservoir Dogs is about since it's your film this week?
Sure. So it's about a diamond heist gone wrong. There are six guys, all in black suits and sunglasses, and they're going to steal some diamonds. Except what they don't know is one of them might just be a rat to the cops, and they don't know who. And the heist does not go well. And the movie, I don't know if it takes place exactly in real time. It almost does. It's a little bit nonlinear, not unlike The Killing, because as the movie plays out in real time, like real movie time, we're cutting back and forth to the backstories of other characters. So the movie starts with them all in a diner before the job, and then the credits roll. And then as soon as the credits are done, the heist has already gone wrong, and now it's the aftermath. So you don't even see the robbery at first. And the whole movie basically plays out with them trying to figure out just what in the world happened and who's the rat, if there is a rat, and who's dead, who's alive, what are we going to do, who's got the money, how do we go on? And that's basically the movie. It's very much like a stage play. It's kind of a one room, one setting thriller.
Yeah, the majority of this movie takes place in a warehouse. of like and I only know this because I think I saw it on a Reddit post of like a funeral home,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, you
Which
can
is a
see
neat you
like what the heck are those called? You can see caskets in the background
oh
of the
yeah.
main thing,
You
like
like
standing
did a
up.
spitting motion with your
Yeah,
hand and that threw
what
me
are those things
completely
called?
off.
Yeah,
There's a hearse. That's what like Mr. Blonde
yeah,
is sitting
there's
on
a
at some
hearse.
point. The like weird bathroom that they go wash up in the beginning of the
That's
movie
the
is like
embalmer's room.
yeah. So I only realized that because I was reading Reddit. But
I didn't realize it till like the second or third time I watched it.
that's
So,
cool.
mm,
Um yeah, it is this like and this one room thing and the main story, I'm gonna like underscore that. And I also didn't necessarily realize this, but it's a really neat idea. Is this like it does play out in real time, like air quotes, real time, with the exceptions of those like vignettes
mhm.
of kind of how the crew got assembled together and then like little bits before the heist or moments during the or like the aftermath, which is really cool. And I'm like really glad it did this. We never see the heist taking place. Um, I don't know, like that's that would be the script I assume, which is like this genius way of hiding a really difficult thing to do in your movie, and it just makes it cool, right? Like I was almost shocked they showed us as much as we saw. That was
Mhm.
kind of going into this movie. Going into this movie, what I knew was the nonlinear part. I knew it was like an ensemble cast, which it kind of is. You know, it's like a fairly large cast ish, and or at least there's like a lot of characters who do important things. And then I knew it was like a low budget film, which that's like, and so I like kind of was knowing that going into it. And I knew a couple things. Vaguely remembered something about the like one interrogation scene where he's dancing around and like
Yeah,
I'd seen
stuck
a
in the
thing
middle
or
with
two.
you.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
there's a thing or two, but I really didn't know all that much going into this film. And that was proven to me as the film went on. I was like not knowing where it was going at all. So it was a fun watch, and I'll say it up front that I enjoyed this film, which
Uh-huh.
was I'll reveal that because the way I kind of want this conversation to go today is I want to talk about like the impact of this film and like why it's
Hmm.
important at the time. I mean, we can go through kind of like we do chunk by chunk. You don't
Yeah.
have to necessarily do play by play, especially since I saw this movie 2 days ago and not
Hmm.
yesterday. It's
Right.
already a little bit hazier than it would
Well,
be
and since
anyways.
this movie
But
takes place in real time, it's there's not as much to cover. This isn't like White Noise or something that's like this big sprawling thing.
yeah,
So,
there is like this event
mhm.
happens. Um, I did think it was really interesting that it is this like big it's kind of what I imagine and like have put together a Tarantino film being is how this movie opens, which is that like scene talking about like music
Hmm.
and like what songs mean, which was simultaneously like a kind of like fun scene, but also being like why I've never been really interested in watching Tarantino films.
Hmm.
And like this is something that I'll work through as we uh talk about this film is like I have a lot of interest and a lot of respect for like those scenes being able to play out, but there's sometimes and I'll like immediately this is a kind of funny to like immediately kind of get into. There's immediately like just I don't care for what we're talking about. I don't
Right.
need to hear Quentin Tarantino explain like a virgin in his words, right? Like that's like something I don't have any need for. But that's kind of the only time this movie does that is that opening scene, and then maybe some other things that there's some other things throughout the movie that are similar but more comedic with time, and but that's how this movie starts. And then I thought it was really interesting that we like go immediately into it going wrong,
Hmm.
which kind of immediately going into this, I think with in such a fun way. And we can have this conversation now, we could have it later, we can not have it at all. You can tell there was a guy who really liked The Killing and movies like it and spent his time thinking, how would I change this? What would I tweak?
Hmm.
And he then made this movie, right?
Hmm.
And there's no and as I was reflecting on this movie, there's like no shame in that, right? There's no shade being thrown of going, oh, well, all he's doing is the killing. No, he's not. By no means is he just doing the killing. He's taking an element of it and he's adapting it. I think
Mhm.
we speak very very highly of adaptions on this show already. I mean, we talk about a lot of things that are based on books that we like more than the books on the show. We've talked about White Noise.
Because
We've talked about
books are stupid, guys.
because books suck. No, believe it or not, I don't think that. But
Mhm.
if you're watching the show, you might be shocked.
I mean, for the record, Andy does like books more than I do.
I think
Andy's
I
a
do.
true book fan. I'm just like a casual book reader occasionally.
Yeah, I like some books a lot, and then there's other books I can't get into at all.
Hmm.
But our book talk is for the official after show that doesn't actually exist.
The after
When we
party.
start the only book podcast.
Mm.
But like, and you can see that by the fact that obviously what's really neat about the killing,
Mm.
spoiler alert for last week's episode, is that the last 20 minutes is it all going wrong.
Mm.
And Tarantino clearly was like, I loved that.
Mm.
What
Let's
if
do
I
that for
did
the
that?
whole movie.
Let's do that for the whole thing. And that's what this is. Like, let's do that for another hour and 20 minutes. Let's just explore that.
Mhm.
That's neat. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I think, not to jump too far ahead to, some of the impact of this movie, but when we get to that, that's going to be a part of it, is the subversion of tropes. Um, but I'm glad that you didn't know a lot about this movie going into it. I wasn't sure what you had seen, what you were aware of. I mean, this movie has pervaded pop culture pretty heavily by this point. So it's kind of hard with some movies to avoid certain spoilers or things that, they're just in the culture. And so I wasn't sure what you were going to be familiar with, what was going to be spoiled. So if you were mostly going into this fresh, that's pretty cool. That's the
Yeah,
best way to
it
see it.
was one of the things I knew that I only caught in the moment was, are you going to bark all day, little doggy? Or are you
Mhm.
going to bite?
Right.
And I was like, I know that from somewhere. I know that
Mhm.
from somewhere. Where do I know it from? And I could not think of it. I actually was like, is it from like a song? Like a rap song that I like sample it? And I Googled it and nothing. And I was just like during the movie, I was like, I
Mhm.
gotta know. And so I looked it up and nothing came up right away. So I was like, okay, I'll look it up later. And I think again, it was like either as I was drifting off to sleep or like right when I woke up, I was like, oh my goodness, I remember where it's from. And for whatever reason, they play it during the opening of this Christian apologetics podcast that I like. And where it's like, it's a podcast that's been around forever. So they kind of do the like, we're going to play a bunch of sound bites thing that podcasts did like a decade ago.
Mhm.
And that's one of them. And
Hmm.
I can't quite understand why,
Right.
but it's like, or where that came from. But it was really funny to realize, like, oh my gosh, that's where that's from. So, and like, again, like, that's one of the few moments that's like, oh, I know that
Mhm.
beat or whatever. But I did go into this like fairly fresh. Or I mean, not even fair, like, I went into this, I think, as fresh as I could,
Dang.
which is kind of shocking.
Yeah, it really is. For as much as this movie has influenced the culture. But I mean, that opening scene, for the folks playing along at home, it's literally just all the guys sitting around a table at a diner just talking. And like you said, it's Tarantino talking about the meaning of Madonna's Like a Virgin and his interpretation of it. And then like they start talking about tipping, and Mr. Pink is like, I don't tip. And then they're like, why? He's like, I don't believe in it. And then they just go through this whole thing. And that whole scene is kind of a calm before the storm. What one thing Tarantino does really well, um, and while, and we can get into this a little bit later, but I have obviously everyone's been influenced by Tarantino. I'm a fan of some of the things that he does in his films. I do have my problems with his films, and this film is by no means perfect. But one thing he does really well, and one thing he did well, even in this, his first feature ever, is he's really good at lulling you into a false sense of security and then shocking you with something else. And that's very evident multiple times through the movie, but he hits you with it within the first like 10 minutes because you get this really long scene of literally just banal dialogue. It's just pop culture, just guys talking. It's not particularly uninteresting, but it's also not groundbreaking either. It's just Conversation.
And I'd even say in during that scene, I was kind of like, okay, if
What are we
this is
doing?
yeah, if this is what it is,
Right.
I don't know, man. But it was like,
Exactly.
okay, and there are some great lines in there, like, "You want me to shoot this guy?" Classic, kind of like whatever.
Hmm.
Um, there's there's a line that like as they get to go, I wrote it down. It's all right, Ramblers, let's get rambling.
Hmm.
Great line, but it's just like, okay, we're all just like talking,
Right.
but then it's like credits,
Hmm.
like music. They're all walking in slow mo. Which is it a decision, or was it just because they were like, "Oh crap, we did this wrong"? That it's that weird half frame
Oh, the
slow
post-process
mo.
slow-mo? I
Yeah,
don't actually know. I'll give the benefit of the doubt and say it's a stylistic choice because it definitely sets a tone of like an earlier, the movie feels very 70s.
the
And
movie
that much
feels
is purposeful.
so 70s
Right.
in such interesting, like 60s, 70s.
Okay, Billy's super sounds of the 70s weekend.
In all caps, it's Stephen Wright.
Yeah, that's the thing. When I rewatched this Sunday, I was like, Andy's
and,
gonna crap when he hears Stephen Wright.
and he's gonna lose his mind. Uh, yeah. I
Yeah,
so
Billy's super sounds of the
I
70s.
think I like in any view of this movie, I have to just take that element out, or I'll be like, it's so good. Just for Stephen Wright
Mhm.
literally just talking in the movie, and like not even necessarily saying anything particularly funny, but being able to say very
Mhm.
normal things.
The George Baker selection, little green bag, and then it starts. Which, by the way, that's one of the things that's super iconic about this movie is the song choices. The
Mm-hmm.
music selection is really crazy. You get that opening credit thing, and it gives you like a long opening credit. So again, he's almost boring you. He's like, here's some conversation that you don't really care about. Now, interestingly, all those conversations do matter, give or take, later in terms of character development. But at the moment you're watching it and you're like, I don't know why we're watching this. And then you watch them walk while the credits roll and you're like, okay, this is cool, this is fine. And then it's credits over black and you're like, this is fine. When are we going to get to the movie? And about the moment you think that, you start hearing blood-curdling screams and you're like, uh-oh. And we smash cut from black to just carnage in the back seat of an otherwise white, like white leather seats, red acrylic, like crimson paint blood everywhere, and Tim Roth losing his flipping mind. And you're like, wow, okay,
We're
I guess
here. We're
we're
like
here now.
and almost like to what I was saying about the killing, and not that it's like only the killing that's done this. Like, and all of a sudden we're in that like end of a movie. Oh crap, things are going down, and
Hmm.
that's where this movie
Right.
starts and lives. Is
Hmm.
like in the climax of a movie,
Right.
and that's part of I think what like is the smarts of this movie is it's a feature length climax of a story.
Hmm. And it's like I was saying, it's a very shocking way. You're throwing water in the audience's face, and this is what Tarantino does to this whole movie. Is he keeps giving you long periods dense with information and dialogue, which after this, once Tim Roth is shot, Mr. Orange, by the way, audience members at home, if you haven't seen the movie, stop here because it's all
Yes,
spoilers,
watch the
but
movie.
they all have code names. No one's using the real name. So it's Mr. Orange is Tim Roth, Harvey Keitel is Mr. White, Michael Madsen is Mr. Blonde, Steve Buscemi is Mr. Pink, and then the rest really don't matter because there's Nice Guy Eddie, which is Chris Penn, and then there's Joe, who's like the main guy, Lawrence Tierney. He's like the guy, he's the boss who organized. He's the one who runs the operation.
He's the guy who
Um,
said, "All right, Ramblers, let's get rambling."
exactly. And so everything now that Mr. Orange has been shot has inherent suspense and interest to it. So now when Tarantino gives us these long bits of conversation, you're kind of like, okay, but now what's happening? So now you're hooked. And he does this thing where he'll go long, shocking thing, long, shocking thing. And he just keeps giving you shocks with almost no build up to the shock, just suspense of what's happening in general, like in the macro, and then he'll give you these shocks along the way. And that's what he
Yes.
does through like the whole movie.
And there's movies that can do like try to do that on paper and they do it very badly.
Hmm.
This is very well done. They're genuine
Yes.
shocks. This like you're saying like you go from like okay, we're going to go rob the place straight to like a guy bleeding out in the back seat of a car screaming like I'm going to die.
Yeah. In a very at times Bobcat Goldthwait kind of voice, which
I
is
didn't think of it
hilarious.
that way, but that is perfect. Yes.
I'm a good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and here's the funny thing about that. I just want to point this out. I'm not going to camp very long on this, but when I first saw the movie, and even the first couple times I saw the movie, because I've now seen the movie probably 4 times. The last time I realized when I took stock, the last time I'd seen this movie was 2017. The last time I
Wow.
watched it was a while ago. But every time I saw it, until this last time, I always kind of thought his performance there was a little over the top. I was like, okay, you're shot in the stomach, but like, I don't know if that would be happening. And then, 2 years ago, I had a kidney stone for the first time. And now I look at it and I'm like, oh, you know what? That's how it is. Like when there's a pain like that in your center, in your torso, it's not like, you could chop up my pinky, you could hit my hand, like pulverize my hand with a hammer, and it would hurt really bad. But it's out here. Like you can kind of disassociate a bit because it's out there. When there's a excruciating pain in the center of you, it's really, really, you can't get away from it. And you're always squirming. You can't stay still. And I remember when I had my first kidney stone, it was the most painful thing ever. And it was so painful, like my face went numb, my lips went numb, and my hands like tensed, like I couldn't open my fingers. And I was just constantly like writhing around. And it was just like that, except I wasn't screaming. I was just constantly moaning and making really dumb sounds. And so now I look at that and I go, you know what? I think that's I think that's a good choice. I think that makes sense because unless you pass out, you really can't stay still. You cannot stop because it hurts too much. So that's just a little fun thing I wanted to point out on Tim Roth's performance. But
And there's a funny moment in there between Tim Roth's character and who's the other actor again who plays
Harvey
Mr.
Keitel.
Harvey Keitel, where Harvey Keitel's like, "You're gonna be okay." He starts like singing to try to calm him down because there's
Mhm.
like, and what we immediately get introduced to is this like, there's a dynamic between these two
There's
characters
like a
where
weird father and son relationship
there's a weird
between
father and
them,
son
almost like
relation.
what's his
Yeah,
face in The Killing.
yeah. There's this weird father son relationship where
He talks to
he
him like
like
he's 5.
yeah, and when he's where it's like, huh, like they really like he has really taken ownership of this kid,
Hmm.
and you can see that, and it's something the film then like builds up to explaining is like, well, no, they kind of took
Hmm.
a fancy to him,
Yeah.
in like a father son type of way.
Who's a tough guy? They say I'm a tough guy. I'm a tough guy.
Yeah, it's
Like
like
it's funny. It's really funny. So yeah, so they're driving and he's screaming, and then they make it back to the rendezvous point, which is this like warehouse thing in this rundown area in LA. And at this point, we're pretty much in our home for the next like hour plus because they're supposed to wait there for the rest of the guys in case, any of them survived. And Mr. Orange gets to basically just lay on this loading ramp and just bleed out for the whole movie. Like that was his
yeah,
paycheck, is just lay in a pool of blood all day and just don't move. So he really wants them to take him to the hospital. They're like, we can't take you to the hospital. Like, that's not gonna happen. We just gotta wait for Joe. He'll get you a doctor who's like cool with crime. We can't take you to
yeah,
like a regular doctor. And then Mr. Pink shows up, and that's Steve Buscemi.
yeah. Which he's great. He immediately, I was like, who does he remind me of in the way he sounds? And then that also took me like a day to figure out, which is, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the first person to say this, but I forget how his last name, but Akash from Flagrant? He's a comedian.
Yeah.
Forget his last
Hmm.
name.
Well,
They sound,
technically, all Indians kind of sound like Steve Buscemi.
but
All
no,
their voices
this
are very high
guy
pitched.
sounds, they are like that's
Tom
Steve.
Haverford
Steve
in Parks and Rec, like they.
Yeah, but like take a listen to Flagrant next time and close
Mhm.
your eyes and it's Steve Buscemi
It kind of
from
is,
this
yeah.
film.
I'll give you that.
Like it really is enough to be like, who does he sound like distractedly? So
Hmm. Well, Steve Buscemi does have his voice is very high pitched and nasal,
yeah.
and you're right, it is like all joking aside, he, from what I can remember of his voice, because I've seen his reels go by on Instagram, so like I've
Yeah.
seen his comedy a few times. And he does kind of like in the back of my mind, like, yeah, that is kind of a Steve Buscemi sound.
Yeah. You'll look it up later and you'll be like, if it's the right clip, you'll be like,
Hmm.
darn it, Andy was really right. Andy's a genius.
Hmm.
But yeah, he shows up and then they start talking about like if they can take him to the hospital or not, or like there was definitely a rat, and it's here we get
Hmm.
like the introduction that there is maybe some sort of, you know, inside man that ratted them out, because when they were robbing the place, the cops were just there,
Hmm.
and there's more cops, and it's just this. It's again, like, this is a dialogue scene, but it's really good, and it's like there's a lot of tension.
Hmm. And this is when they give us a bit of information on like, the cops showed up too soon because it takes however many minutes for cops to show up once you press the alarm, and they were just already there. And then Mr. Blonde apparently went nuts and started just shooting civilians. And so that's when we get like this little Easter egg of like, oh, Mr. Blonde might be a psychopath, so we might have to worry about that if he shows up.
Yeah. And is this where we cut to Steve Buscemi's like little vignette of him running away,
Yes,
which has him just shooting at one point, which
just
I thought was
unloading.
hilarious. It's just blam,
Mhm.
blam, 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 blam. That's a note in my phone, is blam, 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 because
It's
it was
like
like,
25 shots. I can't keep
it's
count,
an
but it's
impossible
about as
amount.
many as you can have in three guns. It
And
just
is it that the scene where the cops, we then cut to the cops, and it's total like John Woo, them flailing around as like the windshield explodes. I think it's
no,
a
that's
later
later.
scene.
That's
Yeah.
that's Mr.
But it
White.
was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of shooting because I think I forget, and anybody who knows guns better than I do is probably gonna burn me in the comments of all 2.75
Hey,
listeners.
gun guy here.
Yeah.
You suck, Synth, you know?
But I want to say like a Glock 17 or like a Glock 19, whatever model it is. I think they take up to 17 or 18. Like 17 in the mag and then like one in the chambers is like a total 18. I forget how many if you like stagger the load. But generally speaking, you don't get that many shots in a gun.
It's like blam, 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 blam.
Yeah,
It's
it
like, oh
just
my
keeps
God.
going. So that's fun. And he
That's good.
manages to make off with the diamonds. He's actually got the diamonds. He stashed them somewhere, he tells us. But he's like, there's definitely a rat. We got to figure it out. He's like, maybe you're the rat. Maybe Mr. Orange is the rat. And he's like, no, he took a bullet, so don't call him a rat. And then like that's when they're talking about taking him to the hospital again. And he's like, well, we can't take him to the hospital. And he's like, well, he's gonna die. He's like, I'm sad about that, but like some guys are lucky and some guys aren't. And then like they get into this fight and then they pull guns on each
And
other.
part of it is uh the one Mister told Mr. Orange his name,
Oh yeah,
Larry.
yeah. Mr. White told Mr.
Yeah.
Orange his name is Larry, and he told him where he's from. He's like, well, then that settles it. We're not taking him to a hospital because
Yeah.
by association, we're all going to be screwed here. So if they know anything about you. And then that's when Mr. Blonde just kind of appears. He doesn't really enter. He's just been standing there for who knows how long, watching them fight, drinking a soda.
Yeah. He's chugging on a pop from
Mhm.
like a burger joint. And that's where like they start yelling at him, "Are you gonna bark all day, little doggy?" Is in that scene, I think.
Mhm. Oh yeah, because Mr. White's like squaring up to him like they're going to fight. And
Yeah.
then Pink breaks it up because he wants everybody to be professional.
Yeah.
And then there's a great line in there where like after the tensions kind of ease and they realize they're not going to fight, they kind of laugh and like shrug it off. And then Mr. Blonde is kind of like, "I bet you're a real Lee Marvin fan, aren't you?" And they all kind of laugh. I'm like, "That's a great line. Like that's pretty
Yeah.
funny." And he's like, "I got something in the trunk. I think you guys might want to check it out." And here he's got a cop in his trunk. So now they're going
Yeah.
to try to beat the cop up and see if they can get info from him on who the rat might be. And I think it's at this point we cut to uh, I think we cut to Mr. Blonde's origin, like a little vignette on him, where he's getting introduced to the job.
He's getting introduced to the job. Turns out he's family friends with
Hmm.
nice guy Eddie. He's friends
Yep.
with nice guy Eddie. And he's been in prison for a job
Hmm.
that he was doing with them, with their crew, but he
Yeah, he
didn't
got sent up
squeal.
for 4 years and he never squealed.
Yeah.
And it's around here or slightly before here where we get our first like dump of the N-word. It's not one like in The Killing. It's like several dozen. Just
It is
blam,
in
plopped in your lap like a
this. I
steaming
think
crab.
it's there. It's either there or Steve Buscemi.
Steve Buscemi says it first, and then we get to the flashback, and then they start saying it more.
Yeah, which I thought Tarantino's N-word accusations were from like his movies with black people. But
Yeah. I mean,
no.
from Django
They're-
too, but
yeah, Django, or like, I don't know, Pulp Fiction is Samuel L.
mm,
Jackson. And this movie has a black guy. This is later. But
Barely.
yeah, so that's crazy.
Mhm.
I was like, whoa,
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
a lot. He really took that element
Hmm.
of the killing. And I don't know if you ever
Tarantino saw two things in The Killing they really liked. One, it all fell apart in the end, and two, the N word, and he's like, I'm gonna grab onto both of those.
Yeah. So that's an interesting way that it was. Yeah, yeah. It's just like it's crazy. What else? What happens then?
Well,
They
we
wrestle.
established a job, they wrestle. Yeah, we established a job, and then we cut back to the present. They've been beating up the cop to the tune of I think it's I Gotcha by
There is an
Joe
I gotcha
Tex.
needle drop. Yeah.
Yeah. Which there's always a Joe Tex needle drop in a Tarantino movie. So there's that. And then Nice Guy Eddie shows up.
And is
And
like, what are you doing?
yeah, like, why are we doing any of this? And they're like, well, maybe he can tell us something. He's like, you beat him long enough, he'll confess to the Chicago fire. Like, what do you think this is going to accomplish? Let's actually use our heads for a second. I'll call a doctor for Orange. You guys come with me. We'll stay. There's a bunch of cars parked out here. That's kind of going to look suspicious. Let's get rid of those. Blonde, you watch the cop. And
Yeah. And then we have probably the most iconic part of this film,
yeah, they
which
all
is
leave.
yeah. And that's a oneer, right? Like this has
Mhm.
been like one shot for a while. And when they go to leave, it stays this one shot.
Yeah.
It might reset. But then it's for a long time this one shot where Mr. Blonde tortures this cop
Yep.
and to the tune of Stuck in the Middle with You.
By Steeler's wheel. Yeah, he gets a switchblade out of his boot, and we have some fun with that. And then
He's
we get a
dancing.
dancing, and he jumps on him, and the camera pans. This is a very iconic thing. Camera pans up, so that's
Yeah.
spoofed many times. Pans over to the left, and you hear the guy screaming, and then you see him kind of come back in the frame, and he's cut his ear off.
Yeah. Which it
Um,
does this interesting thing, right? Of like even
mhm,
there, it's like kind of lulling you into like
mhm.
this shocking thing, which is then like showing you the guy with his ear cut off. He doesn't
Right.
show you the cutting, but he shows you like
Mhm,
he shows you the setup and pans away and comes back. It's like simple but effective.
mhm. And then we get another oneer where we just follow him outside. And this is a fun thing that he does. Again, Tarantino likes to do this and he's very good at it. He likes to kind of toy with the audience's expectations, toy with tension, and he likes juxtaposition. So we get this oneer where we follow Mr. Blonde out and you hear the music starting to fade. And when he leaves the building and walks out on the street, all the sound from outside kind of comes in. And it's like a normal day. Like people are probably mowing their lawns, you hear traffic, whatever's happening, and Mr. Blonde just casually walks to his car and gets like a gas can out of the trunk. And it's this great juxtaposition of like the idea that anything can be happening behind any door, the most horrific thing, but life is still going to kind of go on outside. And then he walks back in and we're instantly hit with the music again. You're like, "Oh crap, right. He's got a gas can. This is going to go south real quick." So how
Yeah,
are
and
you in this moment, Andy? How are we feeling? Because this
I'm
might be the
like
most tension-filled, shocking thing of the whole movie.
I
This
think I
sequence.
was I was definitely engaged. I
Mm,
thought that he was handling the tension well, and I think I was experiencing him handling the tension well. I was like, yuck. I mean, I don't
mm.
think I was anywhere near being actually like, ew, no, 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 no.
Right.
But I,
As
it
much as you
was,
can, I suppose.
yeah, but it was like, oh, this is
Mm.
messed up.
I mean, there
And the
is a
whole time,
thing that happens in independent films where you kind of sometimes in certain films you're like, I don't really know what we're gonna do. Like we could do anything. And that's really the only time, I don't know about you, but it's the only time I ever feel suspense is when I'm in a film where I'm like, if I feel like we could do anything, then I'll feel suspense. I'll feel nervous.
no, that's a good way of putting it. I mean, that's certainly the case. That is something that I think is really interesting. And we've already mentioned it a couple times on this episode, and I think it's funny to bring it up again. I think with White Noise is a movie where it could go anywhere, and so the
Hmm.
suspense in the last like third of that movie is like really real
Yeah.
because it's like we could go anywhere, and that's not even low. That's like not indie low budget. That's high budget going. We could go anywhere, and me being
Hmm.
like, oh no, what do you mean? Um, and I get you're right in that scene. It is like well, what else is he going to do? And when he gets the gas, it's like, oh dear, like, oh no. And then this whole time he's been, trying to get who the rat is from him. And he's like,
Mhm.
there's no rat. I don't,
Mhm.
how I wouldn't know. Like, there's no rat. I just started.
Mhm.
Come on. And he pours the gas on him and he's, kind of shaking it out as he walks away, like pouring the gas out so that he can light it. And as Mr. Blonde goes to light it,
Mhm.
he gets shot. Blam,
A
blam, blam, blam,
lot.
blam, blam. And in that moment, I was like, wait, what? It's like, whoa.
hmm
And it's Mr. Orange
Yep.
question mark
It's
who's been
Mr.
on the
Orange.
Tim Roth who's been
hmm
on the ground bleeding out, who you kind of forget about because
Yeah.
he's been on the ground bleeding out this whole time. And it's there where I was like, what? And then him and the cop are talking, and and Tim Roth's Mr. Orange reveals, I'm a cop.
hmm
I'm the rat. And I kind of was like, oh, obviously that's why you
Right.
shot him. But even then it
Right.
was like, oh. And the awesome moment of like the cop who's been tortured, now missing an ear, covered in blood and gas, goes, I know.
hmm
We met.
That's a great moment. That's
And
such a great moment.
it is a really good moment. Like like so and so introduced us weeks ago. And
Mhm.
and Mr. Orange is like, oh crap, I forgot. I'm sorry, man.
Yeah. It's such a real moment too. You don't
Yeah,
expect that at all.
but
It's
it's like
fantastic.
that's crazy. And it's like they have a little bit more of a moment, but then like right then they come back, right? Everyone else comes. Or do we
Well,
get
right,
another?
we get a flashback on Mr. Orange. We get his entire
Yeah,
backstory, which is, I'll say this now, as opposed to later when we get into our thoughts or feelings or criticisms of the film. But this film is interesting because it's a little, even though it engages you, it feels a little slower and drawn out at the first 30 to 40 minutes. And then the last hour of the film really kind of hits its stride. And I feel like for me personally, the film hits its stride at its peak, really, when we get that Mr. Orange flashback, because that's
yeah,
when we not only do we get the backstory of who he is, what he's doing, that he's a cop, how he gets in with this group, but we get the commode monologue,
yeah.
and that's just a superbly like perfectly well put together sequence where you see for the folks at home. Do you want to explain what it is?
So the commode sequence is we're already like in this non-linear flashback, not flashback of this undercover cop being trained and being an undercover cop, which
Mm,
in Tarantino's world means you're like on a rooftop with a random guy, like inconspicuous looking guy, which I don't know
mm,
if that's actually what it's like, but you're doing that. And and there's this script that the trainer gives Tim Roth's character gives Mr. Orange, and it's the commode story, which is like you got to do this story and make it your own
mm.
because people
It's
believe
to
you.
earn the trust of these gangsters that you're getting in.
Yeah,
And the
and
story involves crime and you're getting out of it. It's a humorous anecdote to basically charm them with your wit, but to also show them like you're a hardcore dude who's done crime, you know?
yeah, which then this scene is we kind of go from him practicing the story to like we're in the story,
hmm
which is really interesting. And like Tim Roth's narrating it, but then at one point, and it's really cool, like he's in the story, but telling it.
hmm
I feel like you can explain this a little bit better, but then we cut to him telling the story to the criminals who he's going to
Yeah.
join with.
Yeah, it's really well put together because like you said, it's like it's several timelines and it's several iterations of him learning the story, rehearsing the story in front of his trainer, and then telling the story to the criminals that he's trying to get in with, Joe and Nice Guy Eddie, and then a flashback within the flashback to a dramatization of the story he's telling. And he's telling this story about how he, as this character, right, is getting pot from someone and he ends up in a public bathroom. And when he goes in there, there's a bunch of state troopers in there with like a dog. but they don't really pay attention to him. And they're telling their own story, which is also equally fascinating, about a civilian encounter where this guy like kept reaching for his glove compartment, even though like the cop told him to not move. And it turns out that the civilian's just reaching for his ID. And he's like, man, I could have blown you away. And right when he finishes his story, Tim Roth um, is telling the story. And now he's like, what would it be? Non-diegetically telling the story. Like all of a sudden we're like
Yeah.
orbiting around him, telling the story, breaking the fourth wall to the audience slash the cops who are now like frozen in time. It's just a really, it's very much feels like a play. It's really cool the way they do it. And then he, at the peak of the story's suspense of like whether or not he's going to get caught by these fictional policemen, he hits the hand dryer and goes to dry his hands. And it makes like a jet engine sound and it's in slow motion. So it's like this really hyperbolic, like over the top experience. And then we cut back to him telling and finishing the story to Nice Guy Eddie and Joe, at which point the story is finished. And it's just, there's like 5 or 6 different scene changes all melded into this one
Yeah.
sequence. And it's really cool. Um, and that I think is where the movie really hits its apex of quality. But yeah, we see all that. We see him get in with them. And this is kind of where we learn a bit of his, it's still not super explained, but I guess he and Mr. White get along really well.
For
That's
whatever
still not
reason.
really explained. It's just kind of
Yeah.
like they just do. And they're talking about more pop culture references and he gets picked up in the car at his apartment and you see him kind of go through his ritual of kind of like psyching himself up to be undercover and
He talks to himself in the mirror, which is
yeah.
great.
And then I think that's basically it brings us up to speed on everything that goes on with him, and then it gives us the flashback to just after the robbery goes wrong. And you see them get in a wreck because Mr. Brown, is played by Tarantino,
Yeah.
crashes the getaway car and dies. And then they get out of the car, and this is the part you were talking about. It's where Mr. White, like John Woo style, both two guns in both hands, just shoots, just annihilates a cop car.
Yeah. And they're both cops are like writhing around being shot like
And so then he and Tim Roth go to steal a civilian car. And this is a great moment
This is so good.
because they go up to the civilian car and you actually see this woman reach into her glove compartment, which is funny because this is what the cop in the story was just talking about. But she's actually going for a gun and Tim Roth goes around the driver's side and she shoots him in the stomach and he shoots her dead. And you see like this moment in his eyes of like this realization of, ah, crap, I shot a civilian, but now, oh crap, I'm also gonna die. And then pretty much we're back to him bleeding out in the car. But now you get this extra context, this layer of gravity that is given to it.
Yeah. And it's then that we cut back to our main timeline and Nice Guy Eddie and Mr. White and Mr. Pink show back up
Mm,
and they're talking about this cop because and they find Mr. Blonde's body and they're like,
yeah.
what's gonna happen? And
Hmm.
they're like, he was gonna kill the cop. And the nice guy is like, this cop, and he
And
shoots him dead.
nobody cares about the cop, man.
Yeah.
And then he's trying to lie more to like give an excuse of like why this happened, why he killed Mr. Blonde. Mr. Blonde was gonna rip you off, he was gonna kill you guys. And nice guy Eddie's like goes into this diatribe about, well, this, you mean this guy, this friend of mine that worked for us 4 years, never took a plea deal, never nothing. He's gonna just decide to rip us off. I don't think so. And then Joe comes in, which that's something we kind of skipped over for the audience, which is that earlier Mr. Orange and the cop are talking, and the cop's like, we're really screwed. And he's like, well, there's cops just down the street. They're waiting to pounce. And he's like, well, what are they waiting for? And he's like, they were told to hold off until Joe shows up. When Joe shows up, then they move in. So now Joe's here. But Joe knows somehow he's learned that Mr. Orange is the rat. Mr. White doesn't buy it. And then we get the Mexican standoff, which
Yeah.
is a big thing in Tarantino movies. And also, they all shoot each other and die, which is also like the killing. Everybody
Yeah.
fires at
Which
once.
yeah, that's a very reminiscent of the killing moment,
Hmm.
is this like pow and they all fall down
Hmm.
moment. But this time it's caused by the tension within the group.
Right. And that's a great moment. And so Mr. Pink is like the only one who technically,
Yeah, because he was like, guys, no, and he was not
mhm,
part of the Mexican standoff.
right. And he hid under like the off
The
ramp,
ramp.
the ramp or whatever. And so he leaves, and then we're left with White and Orange who are just barely alive. And
Hmm.
we get another like weird kind of moment between them where he's kind of like cradling Mr. Orange's head.
Yeah,
And then
they've
Orange
cuddled
is,
earlier in the movie,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
true.
It's kind of funny.
Like, yeah,
And then Orange is just like, hey man, I'm a cop.
yeah. And this is and to like share the filmmaking of this moment. It's like one shot on Mr. Orange
Hmm.
is is this shot, not on the guy who's the cop. We just see him and we hear what happens to Mr. Pink. Steve
Yeah.
Buscemi runs out, and that's when all the cops get there. We
Yeah, you
hear
hear
tires squeal
gunshots
and
and
blam,
yeah.
blam, blam. And
Hmm. So you know he doesn't get away either.
yeah,
But he doesn't die. If you listen really closely, you can hear that they're like cuffing him. So he doesn't get
yeah.
killed, but he doesn't get away.
And then, yeah, it's revealed like I'm a cop. And then then he shoots him. And
Hmm.
he shoots him, meaning the misters get me all. Larry
Yeah,
shoots
Mr. White.
as the cops come in and are like, put the gun down, put the gun down, put the gun down. And again, we're on. This is just one shot
Right.
on
Yeah, everything
Larry.
plays out in sound here,
Yeah,
which is partially a creative decision and partially to cover the budget of like we just can't we don't have
yeah,
this many extras and we're not going to film this. But and then everybody dies,
yeah,
basically, except for Mr. Pink. And that's the end of the movie. And then put the lime in the coconut plays strangely over the
yeah.
credits. With
I
the
think there's another
cheapest font
Stephen
you've
Wright.
ever seen.
I think there's another Stephen Wright movie or
Mhm.
Stephen Wright quote and movie. Yeah.
Mhm. There you go.
So, talk to me. Why was this movie a big deal in 1990? What was it? 92 when it came
92.
out?
I think it hit I want to say it hit Sundance like 91 and I think it got released in 92. I can't remember the exact timeline of it. It was very early 90s. It was a big deal for a number of reasons. One being what we already kind of covered, which is this idea of it's a subversion of the genre tropes and your expectations, because almost every heist movie before, and certainly every heist movie after, usually concerns itself for the bulk of the runtime with assembling the crew, figuring out the plan, and then carrying out the heist. And usually, once the heist is finished, that's usually where the movie ends. And this movie decides, well, you know how The Killing mostly spent time on, what we just said, and then everything went wrong, as you pointed out. How about if it just goes wrong immediately, and then we spend the rest of the movie watching it go even more wrong until it completely falls off the rails? And so that was obviously when I say that was new, nothing's ever truly new. There's nothing new under the sun. Things have done things before, but the idea is this was novel for, it seemed new, it seemed fresh. It wasn't something you saw a lot, and definitely not executed at this level if it had existed before. Um, so that was one thing. Another element of it was what you have to remember is that this was, late 80s and early 90s were a big, big time for independent cinema. And there were a lot of new voices that were coming up there that were doing something different outside of the Hollywood system. And and I know the majority of Hollywood history, at least in a cursory way. So I'm not going to condescend you. Condescend means to talk down to somebody that's dumber than you,
Thank you.
which is my favorite joke.
That is great.
That's
Just
one of
doing
my
that
favorite
with
jokes.
any mildly big word is fun.
It's really
Yeah,
fun.
especially around people who think they know better.
Right. Um, but as you're aware, like the dawn of cinema happens.
Yeah.
And then we get the studio system of old Hollywood. You've got the Hays Code and everything. And then the 50s kind of roll around, and the studio system is thrown to turmoil because we have TV. And so people aren't going to theaters as much. And they're like, what the heck do we do to get butts in seats? And so this happens like every 25 years. Every generation or so, Hollywood's in turmoil. And the old guard is out and the new is coming in. And we're always panicking, right? And so they're like, let's do widescreen because they can't get that at home. And then that brought butts and seats. And then they had drive-ins. And so there were all these different things happening. And you get to the 60s. And by the 60s, Hays Code is completely out. There's cursing and sex scenes and things allowed in movies, but there's still like a rating system. So you've got like the grindhouse cinemas and drive-ins that are going, show me everything. Give me exploitation. That's how we get butts and seats. And that's how you end up with like, you know, a bucket of blood or, everything had blood in the title at the drive-ins. It was like, let's just see how gratuitous we can be. That's how we
Killing of
sell.
blood.
Yes, the killing of blood, the bloodening, what but there literally was a movie called A Bucket of Blood. And actually my dad's uncle took them to see that and Color Me Blood Red, which was the other one. When they were kids, they went to the
Wow.
drive-in. And Color Me Blood Red was about a psycho artist who kills like bikini models and then paints with their blood. And this is like 65, I want to say, something like that. So you've got that going on, and Hollywood kind of fractionates, right? Like you've got those guys and Roger Corman, they're doing the exploitation cinema, and then you've got the traditional studios, which are kind of still reeling, trying to figure out what to do. And then you've got the independents, and this is the first time you get like true independents that can actually make money, at least to my knowledge, is like 60s, right? You start getting late 60s, you've got Romero and you've got like Scorsese and Spielberg. These people are starting to come up the ranks, and they're kind of changing the way movies are made. They're changing who's getting cast. The star power is changing, and the system is struggling to keep up with it. And then, of course, the 70s hit, and you've got The Exorcist and The Godfather and these big things that hit. And I know I'm kind of taking like a long-winded approach to like why this was important, but so you get the full scope of it. By the time you get to the mid 70s, we've firmly now planted ourselves in this new paradigm because by 75, Spielberg shows up with Jaws and literally creates the blockbuster. It's never happened before. There have been successful films, but never like that. And now the studio system changes and they go, how can we do that again? And so now you've got the studio chasing the blockbuster every summer, right? And so now that Hollywood is starting to change toward what we're used to, and the rating systems are getting a little more ironed out, and what's in movies and what you're allowed to do in movies is a little more stable. And then you hit the late 70s, early 80s, and the studio system has firmly like gotten its footing again. They know what they're doing, and they're in control again. And now all these independents who have come up in the early 70s and late 60s are now studio guys, and they're making studio pictures. And so the studios in the 80s, it's just cocaine and hookers and green lighting everything that comes across their desk. It's like, you want a movie about a 16-year-old whose birthday got forgotten? What else happens? I don't care. Let's just make that movie. Here's $6 million. You want a movie by like an SNL alum or two? Yeah, two SNL alums who like look for ghosts, but the script is like this thick and they go to space and we don't really have a locked script. Like you understand, as I'm sure
Yeah.
you've probably heard this anecdote, like when the director walked in to pitch this to the studio they didn't have a locked script for Ghostbusters. And the studio was like, how much money do you need to make this happen? And he literally picked up the script in his hand and weighed it and went, feels like 25 million. And they're like, do it, get it to us by next June and you're golden. And now you just have to make it happen. Like this was the 80s.
Yeah, it's kind of like the beginning of Three Amigos which is funny enough. It's like they just kind of have to talk themselves into making a movie, and they do. But
Right.
no, and like to be clear, like for those who might be a little sleepy or something while listening to this, both the Ghostbusters thing and the girl whose 16th birthday is forgotten, those are real movies that
Mhm.
are popular and
Yeah.
good.
16 Candles, Ghostbusters, Animal House, like just Blues
Yeah.
Brothers, they were literally just greenlighting everything. And what happened in the middle of the 80s, and this is all to answer your question.
No,
In
I'm
the,
here for it. I'm here for the ride.
in the around the mid 80s, we ended up with, I don't have the exact timeline on this, but we ended up with an interesting thing that happened where not only are the studios greenlighting everything, but for what I believe is the first time ever in Hollywood history, the studios effectively, some of them, allowed the floodgates to be opened. And they said, just send us unsolicited screenplays. Just everybody just send your screenplays and we don't care. Now, obviously, not everybody did this, and there were still some, they didn't completely take the guardrails off, but like there was an inroad to Hollywood where there had once been gatekeeping. And this is how you end up with Shane Black, whose work you're not familiar with, but you will be here very soon. And this is how you end up with like Tarantino and a few of these other people. Like they start coming through this now wide open lane. And Tarantino, having worked at a video store, not just any video store, it was Video Archive, but still like he's very much an outsider. And you have Rodriguez and you have the Coen brothers even in the early 80s and some of these other people that are coming up through independent Hollywood now. because now they have to take like a different route. Drive-ins aren't as big a deal, but home movie market is a big deal. And so you've got people who come through there, and you've got people who come through this open script highway that's been opened. And so Tarantino actually sold scripts prior to making Reservoir Dogs. He had written Romance, and he wrote Natural Born Killers. I believe both of which had sold before. Definitely, if not both of them, then definitely True Romance sold to Tony Scott, Ridley Scott's brother, prior to getting Reservoir Dogs produced. And so Tarantino came up in this group of filmmakers that were coming out of this current studio system. We were coming out of the 80s. The suits were running the show. Cocaine was everywhere and everything was getting greenlit, but things were starting to change. By the end of the 80s, you're winding down the end of the slasher boom. You're kind of moving into all these new territories, action films and specifically police action films like the buddy cop genre was starting to kind of get played out. And so now again, Hollywood finds itself in this 25-year slump of going, we got to kind of adjust. And the Sundance Institute is run by Robert Redford. Sundance as a film festival was starting to really gain a lot of traction. Like it was already big, but it was getting really big. I dare say, and I'm sure there's some film buff bros out there that would challenge me on this, but I dare say Sundance was never more relevant than it was in the 90s and maybe early 2000s. It is no longer, I don't think, as relevant. The system has changed too much. Streamers have changed things. People don't buy as much as they used to at film festivals, but at the time, it was huge. And so the festivals were where you went to see new voices. And this is where Paul Thomas Anderson comes out. Paul Thomas Anderson comes up around a similar time as Tarantino and Rodriguez and Richard Linklater and all these people. And so what was happening was you had just gotten out of a full decade of just crazy cocaine movies and fun yuppie cinema. The economy was booming. You know, it was Reagan's America, all this stuff, right? And then you get to the 90s, you have a whole change in the politics of what's happening. You have a change in the national dialogue of what's happening, and you have a change in the system. And then Tarantino shows up. And up to this point, movies have been, at least in the independent scene, they've been experimental. They've been, you know, you had like Clerks and things around a similar time, not exactly this time. And you had the Coen brothers, but the Coen brothers were still very, they were still pretty mainstream, if you even want to say that. Like they still followed a pretty traditional narrative and they were fairly consumable. Audiences, you know, understood what they were in for. And the level of violence and the level of profanity and the level of stylization that Tarantino brought was kind of unheard of. In fact, a lot of his early scripts that he would send out to studio readers would often get a lot of marks against them. Just, you know, F this, F this, F this. It's just like the readers were getting fatigued by how much profanity was in it. And it was just, it's not that profanity didn't exist, as we know. It's just, it, he was excess. It was cinema of excess. And so that changed the paradigm. And so when he shows up and gives you Reservoir Dogs, you've never really seen a heist movie that decides to focus on the things that it focused on. You've never really seen a movie that completely eschewed traditional film scores and just went, let's just score the movie with needle drops, like half the time
Yeah.
non-diegetic needle drops of old music too. Like these are, you're plumbing the depths of music and pop culture that was largely forgotten by the early 90s. These are not popular songs. These were sometimes one-hit wonders or like niche B-sides of things. It's not that no one had heard of them before, but they had been forgotten. And that was kind of the idea. And the characters even kind of talk about that. You know, I haven't heard such and such a song since I was in grade school. It's like, that's what we're doing. And so he decides that he's going to infuse crime cinema with ultra violence that really wasn't available outside of either a slasher movie or like it was within its own genre, right? It stayed in its lane. And you're going to take that violence and bring it into the mainstream with a crime movie that's that violent. And then we're going to just load it with profanity. We're going to load it with these 70s tracks and we're going to do things in a nonlinear way. It was just everything he did was new to people that were used to very straightforward conventional cinema at that point, and who also had come off of this decade of very fun cinema, very light, very even your dramas in the 80s, not all 100%, obviously. There are exceptions to the rule, but even your dramas in the 80s were lighter, and the 80s was just fun. And then you get to the
Yeah.
90s, and grunge is kind of hitting, and there's this sensibility of like doom. And then Tarantino goes, but what if I showed you this with a lot of style? That's my very long-winded answer of like why this struck such a chord with people.
No, and I like it. It helps. I mean, I certainly, and I might have said this off air. Uh, I get it. Like, I get why
Mhm.
this was a big. I get that it was a big deal, and I understand. I just needed like a more full explanation, just to satisfy my curiosity of being
Yeah.
like, what exactly was it?
I
Because
don't
I
know
mean,
if that
like,
explanation actually helped,
no, and I
but
think it does help because it's like it is this. It's contrasting it with what came before
Mhm.
in very particular ways, and it is. I guess it is just, and not to like sound like I'm just gushing about this movie, but maybe it's more of the movie than I thought. You know, maybe I thought it was like one or two elements, and it's kind
Mhm.
of seems like it's the sum of what it is exactly what was new at the time and like
Mhm.
relevantly new.
Yeah, and
And
it was also where it came from too, because this is coming from someone who's outside the system, and Hollywood was really at the time paying attention to the independent scene, and the public was starting to learn about the independent scene because people didn't. I don't think they thought of independent cinema in the decades past as the way the public was starting to think of independent cinema in the 90s. They started to realize, oh, this is an actual viable, enjoyable, and entertaining thing that's kind of an alternative to what Hollywood is doing to an extent anyway.
yeah,
So yeah,
well, that
all those
makes
things combined.
yeah, and it is like with a ton of style, right? We talked about it earlier, but this movie in very good ways, and we speak very highly of movies like this. Looks like it came out in the 70s, has a very
Mhm.
like late 60s, 70s look to it, and a lot of times just with the way it's lit and kind of even its shot choice, I think is very at times 70s. And at other times it's very like this indie cutting edge look.
Mhm.
I think that's maybe some marks against it, even in my book, is like some of the handheld stuff it does, I just think doesn't age well or still doesn't translate. Maybe I think too much about those things.
You can see the
Just
budget in places for
yeah.
sure.
And you can see the budget, but it does a very good job with its budget, I
Mhm.
think. Like we were saying, like it's this weird mix of like stylistic decisions but also budgetary ones, and Tarantino kind of knowing what he could get away with and using it so well, especially like the end is I think a great example of that, where sure you could have a shot or two more, we could see or two more things, but it's this neat moment instead. You don't most people, 98% of people who watch that aren't going to go, oh, look at the budget being
Mhm.
shown in this movie. You're in
Right.
that moment anyways. So maybe in hindsight, you're like, and I know you don't scoff at that moment, and neither did I. But it's like I don't think that's even a moment where it's like, oh, yikes. But and I think even like the long takes make this movie very interesting and and very compelling, and like kind of like it's kind of a feeling like I don't remember the last movie we saw that did this. The Killing kind of does it. Interestingly enough, it's kind of funny, like all the comparisons where you'll go, "Oh, wait a second, we've been in this shot for
Yeah.
like a long time," and I think that's really like cool. You're like, wait, and I think Tarantino shows that more, prepared for that more, leaned into
Mhm.
that more. But you'll be like, "Holy crap! Wait, we've been rolling." Like
Right.
this entire time, like this, like in The Killing, like this entire scene between George and his wife, this has been one shot. We've
Mhm.
been in the scene for like 2 minutes, and we've just been here, and it's the same thing, which is so funny that like there are all these commonalities, and I know it's like Tarantino wanted to make his version of The Killing, and he really does in some ways. He takes out the romance, weird angle, and revenge. He doesn't have interest in that, and he just wants to spend he wants to spend an hour and 20 minutes in the last 15 of The Killing,
Yeah.
and kind of comes up with better reasons for all the characters to
I think
die.
so. Yeah. For sure. I mean,
Well,
compare.
and I think it's kind of a bit unfair to go like which
Mhm.
one's better
Yeah,
as I get ahead of myself, but that is something that like I was saying at the beginning, like you can tell a guy sat around and thought, how would I do that?
for sure.
And and builds on it well, and like
Hmm.
has a different environment where he can make a movie where people like can cuss more
Hmm.
and there's more violence. And that is the thing, like I even thought again, like, and this is looking at it from 2026, right? This movie is violent.
Hmm.
Like it's stylized. It's
Hmm.
like very stylized violence, right? The John Woo, like flailing
Yeah,
around,
the blood
blame,
is
blame,
that
blame, blame,
bright
blame, blame.
red,
Yeah,
crimson, you know.
but that doesn't mean it's not violent. I mean, this is art at the end of the
Hmm.
day. Still reads as ew, yucky. He's bleeding out in the back of
Right.
the car. It doesn't need to be the most gritty, realistic thing. It still reads, especially in this world we're in. And
Hmm.
I think so interesting you mentioned that there's not a traditional score because I didn't clock that, and I think it's something that took me, and it's not to bash this movie unnecessarily. It's something that took me so out of There Will Be Blood and
Hmm.
going, why didn't we just leave this out? Like everything else is fine. Why did you
Hmm.
like turn this up? That like I really like it when movies do that. I feel it's a weird thing because I love it depends on the film. It's
Hmm.
kind of almost like how Deakins talks about shot choice and style and immersion. It's that immersion where some movies you just don't need it. You just
Hmm.
don't need to bother. And then the cool fun thing you can do is this like needle drop thing. And that's fun that was new because that's so new in this movie, right? Like
Hmm.
that's not a thing. And these days we do that
Constantly.
so much, so unnecessarily. What's funny though is there are a couple movies I can speak for that really did that well, and I'm going to shout them out real quick. Obviously, Guardians of the
Hmm.
Galaxy, and when I think about it, and I'm going to make you watch it eventually here. The first Spider-Verse movie was like that's a movie that for whatever reason it's like its soundtrack and its needle drops just worked.
Hmm.
But that's those are like ones I'll give the pass to. Since we're saying it's so cliche, I'll defend a couple movies real quick. But that's and I mean I liked this movie because it tells its story in an interesting way and it has interesting characters and it's consistently creative,
Hmm.
right? And almost almost like what I was complaining about with There Will Be Blood, just because it's so fresh, like subvert something, like surprise me somehow. This movie does that
Hmm.
throughout, right? There's those shocking moments. I was truly like confused when Mr. Blonde got shot. Like there were moments where it's like, what's happening? I think that helps you stay interested. Does everything need to have crazy plot twist every 20 minutes? Absolutely not. Please no. I would
Hmm.
prefer not because then you're just forcing stuff in. But I think this movie does that really well.
Yeah. And to kind of sum up where we're at with it, I think another thing, well, and before I even go down that road, I think it's worth pointing out that when Reservoir Dogs came out, it made a splash, but it didn't make it to the public necessarily as
I
well.
noticed it didn't make a lot. It didn't make a lot of money.
It only went to
Not
like I think less than 100 screens. Like it made its budget
yeah.
back, but like it did really well with critics and it did really well, in that artistic sense of like being well reviewed and being well regarded at festivals, and it made a splash there. The public didn't really get to be aware of it until after Pulp Fiction came out. And then when Pulp Fiction was a massive success, then people went back and got Reservoir Dogs and were like, oh, this is really cool too. So
And
Reservoir Dogs, yeah,
dumb question. Pulp Fiction's his next film.
yeah,
Like
Pulp
obviously it's
Fiction's
after, but is
immediately
it his
after this.
directly? Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah,
This shows you how well I know Tarantino. I was pretty sure,
yeah.
but I wasn't 100% sure.
No, yeah, you're correct. He finished this. It went well, and then he went to Amsterdam and wrote Pulp Fiction for a while, and then came back and made Pulp Fiction. And Pulp Fiction was what ultimately launched him into the stratosphere. Reservoir Dogs kicked the door open, but Pulp Fiction basically bulldozed the whole darn house and just went, "I'm here." So, um, this movie did do a lot, and it's funny because it wasn't just this movie either. When you talk about like things that redefined filmmaking in the 90s. This movie did a lot, and a lot of what Rodriguez was doing. Like there were several names.
Clerks came out 2 years later, which is kind of crazy to think about. I mean, not
Yep.
that that movie's crazy good, but like
No.
it made another film that like made a splash and like shifted things around.
And frankly, I'm gonna just say it. It didn't deserve to make a splash. There was no reason for it to shift
I
things
haven't
around.
seen it in forever since my Kevin Smith phase, and
Yeah.
I have a really warm heart in my a warm what?
You
I
have
have
a
a
really
really
warm soul in your heart, in the butt of
I
your
have a,
soul, you have a
a
heart of
really
your
soft spot in my heart for some Kevin Smith films. Um, Like the first half of Mallrats and Chasing Amy may or may not be one of my used to be one of my favorite movies of all time.
I liked Chasing Amy well enough. I have a chip on my shoulder. I'm kind of I'm a bit biased against Kevin Smith films because I don't know. I
See,
don't.
I here's my brief defense, and I can't believe this is like in our
Yes.
Quentin Tarantino episode. Um, I was a comic nerd. I'd like to think right before the wave crested for that
Mhm.
to be like approved and like popular. I
Right.
mean, obviously the MCU was like in full swing
Hmm.
when like I was in high school, but I also was like reading comics that were coming out, which has yet to actually ever become really cool. But like I was a comic nerd, and so I can really understand like that's the connection point with a lot of those movies. I mean, Chasing Amy, Mallrats, that's it, right? And so that's the soft spot in my heart for those films. I just think Chasing Amy's fun because it's like super grounded characters doing things. But
Yeah.
it's also a movie I'll probably like never watch again
Yeah.
for
Chasing Amy
maybe
was
obvious
fine.
reasons.
Chasing Amy was fine. Like I said, my beef comes mostly, and again, this has nothing to do with Tarantino necessarily, but I think it's a good overall point of like, for lack of a better term, how easy it was to get a career in film as an independent in the 90s. You could make a movie in black and white where all you did was stand around and talk for an hour and a half
Yeah,
in a convenience store and you got a career. Like that,
I've
that
never
was the thing.
really I've never really been interested in rewatching Clerks
No, there's no
or any of
reason
the
to.
sequels from it. So like
No.
that's it's like a movie you kind of have to watch if you're a film nerd. And I actually have a couple buddies that I need to check if they've seen it because they're supposed to be the cinephiles. And I bet you a good amount of money that they've never made it through that film.
Yeah.
But I love them.
Hmm.
A little bit of shade. I love them. But yeah. Anyways, so when it comes to Tarantino films,
Hmm.
at least from one in and trying to watch Pulp Fiction at least like twice and never making it through, I think, and this movie, easily made it through this time. I
Hmm.
was honestly, this was a bit of like, I'm mad I never gave this a shot
It's also
earlier.
Tarantino's shortest movie, so it's got that
That
going for
helps.
it.
I think and this is like you were mentioning, this is getting a taste for Tarantino, and I think I am. Like,
Mhm.
I get a fair enough sample that there are things that he does that I really like, and there's
Mhm.
things that I don't care for at all. I've kind of already said that, but that's where I'm at. In a very like kind of almost neutral way, almost so that it balances itself out to be like
Yeah.
Reservoir Dogs is good,
Hmm.
like where it's like I like some of the banter with the characters more than others. There's parts of it that like it loses me. I don't need such things being talked about in my film, Mr. Tarantino. From your own mouth, I'll respect it. You're not
Mm.
making somebody else say that. Um, I even think, and I kind of didn't know, I don't know where to land with this. I think some of the violence, you can get a taste for where it might go. How about I
Mhm.
put it that way? In Reservoir Dogs, I think it's fine, but it's like, eh, you know? Um, but it's kind of weird because it is like I'm trying to work this out where it's like I liked it. I have no overwhelming negative feelings, but it's kind of like I I see his sensibilities and I respect some more than others. And I think that I've said that already, but that's where
Mm.
I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, well, that's and the redundancy that you feel there is also kind of the redundancy in Tarantino. He has a tendency to, especially in his early works, he had a tendency to be very redundant with his dialogue at times. There's some moments there when Mr. White and Mr. Pink are trying to, get a handle on the situation. They're talking about the rat, and it's like we could have cut about 4 pages of dialogue out of this, and we'd still get the same thing. Tarantino, and this is why I say this is a good sample of what Tarantino movies are like because it's got all of his strengths and weaknesses on full display. And they're on even more of a kind of an exaggerated display because this is his first film. So he's taking really big swings and really big misses all in the same film, right? So you can clearly see what his proclivities are going to be. Even though he does mature a bit as a filmmaker as time goes on, he never really gets away from all of his weaknesses, the biggest being his overindulgence and his long-windedness. And I know that's kind of ridiculous for me to say since I just went on a like 15-minute tirade about like the history of cinema that led up to this movie. But Tarantino really does like to hear his characters and by extension himself talk. And sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse. But he is really good at
Yeah.
tension. He's really good at shock value, and he is good at telling a story. He just needs, much like Paul Thomas Anderson, to learn how to edit his dialogue, whereas Anderson needs to learn how to edit his films. That's
Yeah.
my takeaway.
That's a good way to put it. And I want to be clear. I think probably the biggest shining star of this film is the way he told his story.
Yep.
Obviously, and the way those like webs string together is seen in the like commode story scene. They're great. It's absolutely great. The way the plot's revealed, awesome. Love it.
So,
Everything else, there's some other things.
eh,
Eh.
rating wise, what would you give it?
Ratings, see, I've been trying to think of where I'd land with this. I think it's really, really good. I think, trying not directly comparing it to The Killing, but seeing
Mhm.
where I gave The Killing, I think I'm gonna put this movie a little above it and give it maybe like a little. I'm gonna give it like a 7.1, 7.2, but it's real good. Like it's
Yeah.
worth the hype. This was not the like, am I watching the same movie that everyone who's loved this movie has seen? It's not that. I think
Mhm.
I think this was really good.
Yeah. Um, and does it have your heart?
It does not.
I was gonna
It
guess
definitely does
no.
not.
Yeah, I was
What
gonna guess
what
no.
would you rate the movie? We need to get this on the record.
Um, this again, this is one of those movies where when you see it for the first time, it blows your mind, kind of. And I think for me, it blew my mind even more so probably than you, because up to this point in your life, you have seen like a fairly diverse slate of films by now. Not a lot of films, but a diverse slate of films. Whereas I saw this movie when I was 16. And up to that point, all I'd really seen was, some Jurassic Park and, I'd seen Pirates of the Caribbean, Lord of the Rings, and I'd seen good movies. But it was a very specific niche of film. And I watched a lot of monster movies. I watched a lot of like fantasy and adventure movies, and I watched a lot of Tim Burton. And so the darkest, the most violent I ever got was like Tim Burton and this and that. And like at 16, I hadn't seen Evil Dead 2 yet. I hadn't seen Fight Club. I hadn't seen really anything. And so this was the first R-rated film I'd ever seen. And
Ooh.
when I saw it, I was like, I didn't know you could do any of this in a movie. Like it was, understand 16-year-old
Oh,
me
that's fun.
having
This is
seen
like
nothing.
your film version of melted cheese.
It was,
Like like on a sandwich. Like that's
yeah,
incredible.
it
That's really
really is.
cool.
It is. It was like, it was a baby hippo moment. I had no clue that you
Yeah.
could say
Oh,
this, that you could do
he's
that.
saying F words. He's
Yeah.
cutting a guy's ear off. Huh.
Yeah, I didn't know that you could like tell a
Double
movie like a
rainbow.
yeah, double rainbow. Like it's at a sequence, but I still follow it. Like you don't need a score. Like you can just do old weird 70s songs that I'd never heard. And I'm like, these are the best songs I've ever heard in my life because you have nothing to compare it to at all.
Yeah.
So when I first saw this movie, it was a 10. Now granted, it's no longer a 10. I think if I were to give it a fair rating, I give it like a high seven something. So like maybe a 7.5, maybe an 8 if I want to be real generous. And maybe I'll give it an 8 just because of everyone else kind of did, not quite what 16-year-old me, but everybody else did kind of have their minds blown by the movie. So I'll give it an 8. If I wanted to be salty about it, a 7.9, but we'll give it an 8 just because of its significance. Um,
Wow.
but it does a really good job and it does a really great thing. It is really rocky the first like 30 minutes, especially this last time I watched it. I was like, we really could have tightened up some dialogue and there's some things here. Like it's not perfect, but yeah, 7.9, 7.8, somewhere in there. You know what? I'll be grumpy and give it a 7.9. I won't give it
Nice.
exactly an 8. I want to be
You'll hold that
I'll be a little withholding.
1.1.
Yes. And it does not have my heart, but when I was 16, man, this movie for a full year, maybe even, well, honestly, yeah, for a full year, this movie ruled my mind. Like
Wow.
I wanted to just make this movie over and over and over again. And like I listened to the soundtrack nonstop, and a friend of mine and I would talk about it all the time, and we constantly did references to it, and like we would quote scenes, even though it's not even compared to other Tarantino movies and compared to other movies, it's not the most quotable thing. But we had this thing memorized, man. Like this movie really changed a lot until I saw more movies. And then I went, well, now these movies blew me away. And it was just like from 16 to 21 was this massive awakening of what you could do in cinema. And it all blew me away.
Yeah, that's understandable. And it's like that's part of what I was saying with how I felt about the movie is like I've I've watched movies for this show where it's
Mhm.
like what's the deal? Like why do people like this? This was like, oh, I like this. This is
Mhm.
cool. I just want to be sure about what I'm seeing and what I'm picking up on because I wasn't sure. And
Mhm.
so um but yeah, I get it. Like I get why this movie could blow somebody's mind. And not saying that it didn't blow mine, but it's I like you said, I've seen enough. I think I know enough, but it's like this movie is really cool. It's
Yeah.
like it may not be the um craziest movie ever, but it's really good.
Yep. So
That's
that's
the show.
that's the show. Like, subscribe, comment, leave a message, send an
Send an
email.
email to only problem with Santino and Andy at gmail.com. No, now I have to edit you out saying that because I edited it out last time
Oh, you
so that
did?
people can't know.
Oh, well, I'm gonna have one more time just to make your life harder.
Darn it. Darn it. I might forget. I almost forgot last time.
Well, that's we really need to figure out a way to end the show on a more energetic note because we I feel like we always run out of steam and then we're kind of like bop bop bop. Good night, folks.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I don't know if I could even do that. Do you think I could do that?
I'm hating it. Yeah, if because now it's spoof, it's parody, so we can get rid of
Okay,
it.
there we go.
It's fair use.
There we go. Well,
Talk to you later, suckers.